what I think is your superpower, or one of your superpowers, is your creative thinking. Have you always been like that from a child, or is it something that you've developed over the years?
Well, it's kind that you think I've got a superpower. So I think I've always been a creative person. So I like draw. Was an artist as a kid. Would like draw. I say an artist. I would draw a lot as a kid, and was always making things. And whether it's like recipes and cooking, like watching what like ready can't cook, won't cook. What's it called?
Ready, steady,
They're ready, steady, cook. That was it.
Won't
Ready,
cook.
one of those things, right? But we'd never have the ingredients that they actually had on the thing. So just like use what crap we had in the cupboards to try and like make different foods. And then at school, really interested in design. That was like my main subject. And then went on to study product design at uni, and then did a master's degree in it. And what that taught me in terms of being creativity was the ability to think laterally. So for example, most people will think longitudinally in terms of they'll have an expertise. So for example, we're at Nouveau today. So you have an accountant that is an amazing accountant, goes deeper and deeper into accounting, and then will set up an accounting business. But first and foremost, they're still trapped in that way of thinking, and that can actually be a curse for them. In fact, very often is a curse because, for example, one of the traits of an accountant is they're always looking for what's wrong, and they want everything to be perfect, right? So then all of a sudden you put them in a business, well, nothing's going to be perfect in a business. And if you're always looking for what's wrong, you're going to miss the opportunities. So you have to snap them out of their thinking, of their longitudinal thinking. What I've been able to do is to think laterally, and which is a phrase coined by, called Edward Deming. Is it Edward Deming?
I don't know.
I made that up. No, who wrote Six Thinking Hats?
I don't know. Not read it.
Well, it's a great book. We'll come on to that. We'll add that. You have to add that as a note. Whoever wrote Six Thinking Hats. Anyway, but he coined this phrase, lateral thinking, so that we can think in a different way. So, for example, I could have a problem here in business, but I could have learnt something in a cookery book this weekend that could actually solve the problem here.
Yes.
And it's the ability to look across different planes to find solutions that aren't necessarily obvious, I think is how I would kind of class creativity.
Yeah, and what I've found really interesting as we've spoken is that you apply that creative thinking to business contexts. It's one thing to use that product design thing. Steve Jobs was a genius at lateral thinking, wasn't he? Yeah. But you did it with Go Proposal. But before we get into that, did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
I think so. I think I'd always associated entrepreneurship with freedom, I think. And my parents worked, and but I think that kind of drove me not to follow in their footsteps, because they were real hard workers, worked for companies, and then we're both kind of shafted in some way. Like my dad, they'd like messed his pension up, so we ended up with like half the pension he should have done. My mum ran the most successful nursing home in the entire company, and the only nursing home with a waiting list, and really cared for the patients, and was just my grandma was there. It was a lovely place to be. And then when she left, I think they quibbled over a last month's pay and give her a bunch of flowers. And it's like, just for the effort that they put in, it just didn't kind of stack up for me that they'd given their life for this. Whereas the only kind of entrepreneurs I saw around me were uncles and aunties who didn't necessarily have big businesses. One had like a glazing business, a skip hire company. One had a garage door business, but they seemed to live a more fun life. Yeah. They drove nicer cars. They seemed to have nicer holidays. They seemed to have bigger houses. Yeah. They seemed to have more of a laugh, be more relaxed, be fun to be around. Yeah. And so I think if I look back as a kid, it was like, that seems like a better route to go down than this. Yeah. And that was my only kind of connection to wanting to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I guess that's why you went down the product design thing, because not always school is the best place for an entrepreneur skill set. I mean, how was school and stuff like that for you?
I did well at school, and I was able to kind of have a laugh and do well in different subjects. Maths was one of my subjects I was just particularly good at.
I was great at maths. I love maths.
And there was I remember this one thing in maths, and it kind of broke my thinking in a good way, because I remember, so I was in the top set of maths going into GCSEs, and I was like midway in the top set. There's people far cleverer than me and would get better grades than me. And I remember we started to do our mock GCSEs. So it was the first time that we started to think about results.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, and A stars had just come out. So it was the year that A stars were invented. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to go for an A star. Like everyone else was like talking about, thinking, yeah, an A star. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to go for an A star. Then I remember having this thought thinking, and I'm going to get the highest grade in the class. So like, screw everyone else. I'm going for it. And then I remember having a thought, which was, hang on a minute. Why am I limiting myself?
Yeah.
Why don't I just go for 100%?
Yeah.
Because if I get 100%, the A star doesn't matter and the top of the class doesn't matter. And it was that idea that, you know, we can have these things that we think are actually pushing us or we're aspiring towards, but actually they're limiting you.
Yeah.
And so it's to break that thinking down and think, what is the very best that can be done in this situation? Yeah. And for me, it was 100%. And the moment I decided to do that, life became easier because then I was sat in lessons and I remember the teacher like talking about a subject or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't understand what you're talking about. And then she'd try and explain it again. I said, yeah, I still don't understand it. Now, the old me wouldn't have dared because I'd been too embarrassed to look stupid in front of everybody. But now it didn't matter because I had a very specific goal. I remember saying, well, you'd have to come back at break if you want to learn this. I'm like, yeah, okay, which one? Is it dinner time? Like, I don't care. I don't care about missing breaks. I don't care about looking stupid because now I'm aiming for this. I remember getting to the end of my exam, it was the mock exam, thinking, I think I've got everything right there.
Yeah.
I think that's all right.
Yeah.
And afterwards, she wrote on the board, like, so many people have got A, so many have got A stars. And then she wrote 100% in the middle of the board. She said, but someone has achieved something that no one has ever done in this school before. Someone's got 100%. And everyone's going, bet it's Andrew Dobinson, bet it's Charlotte Farmer, all these people, right? I'm thinking, I think it's going to be me. And she just pointed at me and just stared straight at me. It's James Ashford. And I thought, yeah. And I did it twice more in my mock GCSEs. When I got to uni and did my degree, I got 93% for my degree. It was the highest degree that I'd ever awarded. But I became friends with one of the tutor. We got really good friends. Yeah. And we were having a drink in a pub many years later. And he said, I've got a confession. What is it? He says, you never got 93%. You got 100%. He says, but we didn't dare award it because we thought it would like trigger an investigation or something because we'd never given an award that high before.
That's amazing. I've got a funny story about a science exam, and this is where like I knew I'd be like sales and marketing was my thing because it was a science exam and it was like 30 questions, GCSE, and I got 100%. And I went home and I didn't say, I got 100%. I didn't say I got A star. I went, best in the country. Best in the country. I was because I got 100%. But that's the funny thing. But I love that. And it speaks to something we're going to talk about later on, which is humility and learning. Because I look at what you've done. I listen to the stuff that you've done, the books you've written. And what I think marks your career and the career of great people, the success of great people, is staying humble and learning. Have you, as you've become more successful to the outside world, has that been harder to stay humble, to keep learning and growing?
Yeah, I feel more humility, I think, now, having built the business and sold the business. Yeah. I feel more humble than ever. And I also feel like I know less than I did before. I can't quite explain it, but I'm more comfortable with it. So on my growth up, as I was kind of growing the business, you feel the need, you want to prove to the world that you know what you're talking about. Yeah. And you want to kind of be seen as the expert. And there's this idea of fake it till you make it. I never really did that because I didn't feel that was quite right, except once. And I was showing someone this weekend, actually. If you look at my YouTube channel, there's a picture of me on stage, on the Icon stage at Infusionsoft, and I'm there giving this big talk, right? Well, I was never on the stage.
Photoshop.
No, I wasn't. I waited till the event had finished, and they announced the event is over, and I gave my phone to my mate. And I went,
love that.
So I ran up on stage and just pretended to be giving a talk.
That's quality.
And I think on LinkedIn, I'd posted, the only two confessions, right? I'd posted, I've been flown out to America to give a talk. Okay. And my mate laughed at this. He says, you were flown out to America? I'm like, yeah, by the pilot.
Yeah.
But, so it made out like I was a private jet picked me up, but it wasn't. I was just flown out. So I never actually lied. Yeah. So they were the only two times I kind of faked it till you made it. But you kind of feel the need to prove it. And once I'd kind of done it and sold, I feel less need to prove anything. And also, like, I'll be in situations now where I feel more comfortable than ever to say, I don't know. I actually don't know what to do in this situation. Let's figure it out. Let's explore it and let's see what happens. Or, you know, you might be right. I'm okay not knowing and moving into things not knowing. Because I feel I've got the confidence I know I'll figure it out. I know we'll get to the answer because I know how to get to the answer.
Have you still got the drive to learn and develop?
Yeah, I think when I sold and then I started working with Sage, that's when a lot of doubt really kicked in. And I started, because I remember saying to Heather when we sold, I said, it's going to be brilliant, this Heather now. These, you know, Sage is turn over 2 billion, make $500 million profit, 11,000 staff, international business. We're going to really see how I remember saying to her, we're going to see how it should be done now. We've been winging it to this point.
Were you planning on staying for a good amount of time in Sage?
No, the earn-out period, that was kind of the deal. They knew what I was doing. And yeah, that was the crack. And so I said, we're going to see how it should be done now. Yeah. So, and then when I started working with these people who were on significant salaries and been in the business for many years and been in the industry for many years, what you've, in saying that, you've actually kind of bowed down to them and think, everyone here knows more than me, okay, is what you think. And so I really started to doubt myself. And I got into situations where I became impressed with people who had all this fancy data and fancy spreadsheets and all this shit. And then I got to this point where I started to there was a turning point where I started to question them and think, hang on a minute, I don't know if you're right anymore. Yeah. And you're in this world where you're trying to understand what's going on. Yeah. So I remember being in like a marketing meeting and these guys, smart guys, turned up and presented all this data from all these reports and whatever groups they'd had and all these stats and I'm looking at it thinking, I don't think I believe any of this. I don't think any of this is right.
No.
Like they were saying, oh, whatever it was, like so many % of these people said that they would buy a Sage product in the next 3 years. I'm like, I don't think that means anything. I think I would say that to you. Did they give you the card details?
Yeah.
Because like it doesn't mean anything otherwise. Yeah. And I said, well, I actually think that this is the direction to go in. And they were like, what's your evidence of that? And I'm like, well, I spoke to 2 accountants this week, and one of them wanted to talk to me quite early. Like I got a late call. He wanted to speak to me first thing in the morning at 6 a.m. and he was in tears. And he was the CEO of a large firm, and this was the real challenge that he was facing. Yeah. And they're like, well, are you prepared to kind of go for that just because like an anecdotal thing? And I'm like, yeah, I'll stick my neck on the line and go for it. And I remember I heard a story from Jeff Bezos yesterday saying that he remembers being in a meeting where they presented all this data about customer service and how fast the phone lines are answered. Yeah. And he said, well, let's ring it then.
Yeah.
And like, well, no, we've got all the, no, let's ring them now, see what happens. Because that's the answer. Yeah. And sometimes, and the reason why people hide behind data, especially in big companies, and I'm not being critical of Sage at all, they're a great company, this is just what happens in big companies, is that people become fearful of their jobs. Again, not that there was a culture in that company of anything like that at all, but people naturally become fearful. So
empire building, it's normal in massive companies.
So the reason why they'll gather survey information is that then if that decision goes wrong, they can pull it back and say, yeah, but the evidence suggested this, because people don't have the courage to say, yeah, but this is what I feel. Yeah. And sometimes, and this is difficult for business owners, is that, and I've learned this over the years, that we have gut feelings are real things. Yeah. Like our gut can give us more information than our brain. It can give us far more information based on so many things, but the gut doesn't have the concept of language. Yeah. So I can say, I feel that this is the right way to go. And you say to me, well, can you justify it? And I'm like, no, I can't. Yeah. It just feels right. Oh, well, if you can't explain it to me and justify it to me, it's therefore not as valid. Yeah. But in actual fact, it's probably more valid. Yeah.
Because you know.
Yeah, like, I just know this is, I get chills. This is the right thing for us to go. It's that still needs to be countered with people looking at the finances and thinking, you know, does this stack up financially? And you're making a stupid decision. Is it a blind spot?
I know I should go and buy a Ferrari after this.
Yeah, that's it. But, but back to your question of learning. Yeah. So what happened was I started to doubt myself, and the thing that broke me through it was to start learning again. Yeah. because when you learn, back to the humility thing, you realize you're back at the bottom of a mountain, you're learning, but it's that gives you your confidence, because it gives you the right intention, and you can draw a lot of confidence from intention, you know.
I agree. And